as the board was going through.
To me, I thought this was an interesting, like a balanced type draft. Where like I think I mentioned in chat, maybe within the last like 10, maybe even 15 drafts, you would see a position that's not represented. And in this draft, I saw pretty much all the positions represented, whether it's catcher, shortstop, second base, third base, pitcher, relief pitching. Sometimes you're missing a whole crop of catchers. You're missing middle infielders. I felt like in this draft, you had a chance to draft a whole roster. Not a whole roster per se, but like you can definitely fill a couple spots in the middle infield and the pitching category and the outfield category.
One of the things
that was really balanced.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me from specifically catching, I feel like it's been 3 or 4 years since there's been a good catching crop. And this year wasn't like ideal catching crop, but I mean there's definitely 4 or 5 catchers that are going to come out of this class and probably like be at least a one-time All-Star. I feel like there's some good talent to come from there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see. Well, actually, overall, I didn't see as many studs as other drafts would be. But yeah, when you talk about catcher, yeah, maybe you'll get a couple All-Stars out of there. But I didn't see that one-star catcher. I definitely saw some startable potential catchers. But anyway,
yeah, with how our file's been, just those catchers that are sort of all right are gonna make an all-star game here and there, just because the position's pretty weak in our file right now. So I guess that's what I was getting at. We've been depleted for a while now, so I think this is one of the years that's really going to get us back on track, and from that standpoint.
And that's good, because like it's kind of a bummer when you see no catch. It's like weird to see like there's not a single catcher. And we're using this catcher as an example because that has happened. But yeah, it's weird to see a whole draft class and not see a single good FCM catcher come out of it. And that could be said about a shortstop too, or even a third base, because we're kind of dry there as of late as well.
Yeah, so I guess it's probably just time to just jump into, and we'll start getting into more specifics instead of boring people with our.
Anyway, so you came up with a good little rundown. I'll go over it real quick. We're gonna go over our favorite pick in our top 10, our least favorite pick from our top 10, favorite pick in the mid rounds 11 through 20, least favorite, and then the late stages of the first round, our favorite and our least favorite. Keep it simple, and then we'll go through our second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round favorites and not favorites, well, excluding the 4, 5, 6. So Peter, I will start with you. Favorite top end pick.
Yeah, so I think this would be the guy if I had the first overall pick. I know needs when you have first overall pick, I think needs play into that pick probably more than they should. But I think if I had the whole pick, I think I would have went with Brian Ross. He ended up going 4th to the New York Mets. And I think, just to hedge this right off the bat, I think it's right there, 1A, 1B with Brian Ross and Brandon Fingers. I think it could go either way when it's all said and done, whoever's the better player. But I think I lean towards Ross right now just because he plays excellent defense. He's a switch hitter. He's not far from the majors. I think he could easily be in the majors a calendar year from now. Excellent defense as shortstop. I just look at him and I see a guy that's going to spend at least 15 seasons in the majors and have like, I don't know, at least 5 All-Star games under his belt.
Okay, we're going to have some fun here then. Let's go here. My favorite pick of the top 10 was Oakland's Carmelo Aragun, if that's the right way to pronounce it. This might be a risky top 10 selection for me, but I when I saw the player, I thought this guy could be an incredible second baseman. I would say second baseman specifically because if you're going to compare him to third basemen, he might not be as strong. But when it comes to second basemen, he might be the best prospect in the file. I think that he will have 25 plus home run potential. He can win a Gold Glove out there. And I don't see many red flags with his with this player card, honestly. I see something across the board. He could be a stud. STUD stud.
Yeah, I just
This
want
year.
to follow up on part of your analysis that commenting that second base is his best position. I think I disagree there, or at least with the line of thinking. I think whether he plays at third or second, I don't think it matters. I think third's never been at a weaker spot within our file now, so
Good point.
I think he's just as valuable wherever he's playing. But he was very high on my board. I'm a big fan of him. You're not going to get any argument from me on him. I think I prefer Ross and Fingers just because Brian Ross and Brandon Fingers because they can play shortstop, and I think that's a big value boost. But in terms of being a power hitter, and if we're talking about who's going to have the best OPS out of those three, Aragoon, Ross, and Fingers, it's definitely going to be the Oakland pick.
And I do agree with you. Even if he does play third, he'll be extremely valuable. I'm not saying he won't be valuable. I would just think that he wouldn't be the best third baseman of the class of third basemen. But I think he has potential to be the best second baseman in the league at some point of his career.
Yeah,
Big fan.
I think it was a real good pick. No disagreement there. Let's see what I have written down. So
yeah, disclaimer: we definitely have our picks written down here, so we're not just floating here.
Right. Yep.
I'm not going to back down either.
Did you have any other favorites to out of the top 10?
I kept it for the most part to one player, but I will say, I mean, I like the top 10, as a whole. I do like Aaron Ford, even though we've seen that what's it called? That build.
We've seen that
fail.
build go both directions.
We've seen that build go both directions. So, but if I were the number one overall pick, yes, I think that's a good pick. I can't see myself going against that pick, even though I love Aragoon. It would be hard for me to go against Aaron Ford.
Yeah, the only argument I can come up with against going with Ford is it's pretty easy to come up with a good option in the corner outfield. Obviously, it's harder to come up with that elite top end option, which Ford certainly has that upside. So I guess it would probably push me towards one of the infielders just because I don't think the difference is that huge, but yeah. I don't think it's any grand argument that Ford was a bad pick at one. I think Corey's going to be pretty happy with what Ford turns into.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And you're right. The middle infield positions are just way more valuable. If you could find yourself a stud, you're more likely to find a good right fielder in other spots than a great middle infielder anyway. But let's go to your least favorite. Let's start ragging on some people. Let's do it. Who's your least favorite?
Yeah. So this mention is going to have a lot more to do with the situation than the player itself, and that's going to be the pick of Jamie Truitt to the Dodgers. And I think this might be a little bit controversial based on some of the comments I heard around the deal, but I think the Dodgers gave up so much for Truitt to get into that number 2 spot, whereas I prefer at least 3 we just talked about in Fingers to Arizona, Ross to the Mets, and Aragoon to Oakland. I prefer all 3 of those guys to Truitt. Truitt can be a top-end player. I don't have a problem with the talent at all. I just think the Dodgers really sold in so much to get to number 2 when I'm not sure it was necessary, number 1, and I'm not sure the talent really lives up to what he paid to get there.
So just a quick overview of what the trade was. LA had pick 7. They traded with Pittsburgh, who originally had the second overall pick. LA traded pick 7, 45, 88, and 118. 4 picks for the price of 1. Just to move up 5 spots. Yeah, I mean, it might be a little too much. I don't mind Truitt. He does remind me a little bit of...
He's a really good player, and I think he's going to be a really good player. I don't think he has unbelievable upside.
He doesn't have unbelievable upside, but he does have pretty good tools. He could be a power hitter who gets on base, who has Gold Glove defense. He does remind me of Kansas City's
absolutely
first baseman, Len Grimes, who is right now currently looking like a Grimes. He might end up being a bust because if he peaks out, that would be a shame.
Yeah,
But if Truitt becomes better than Grimes in terms of his career, if he projects better along
yeah.
the way and gets to
Grimes
his
is basically
peak,
a spot on comparison. Unfortunate drop sometime in this
and,
year.
and you
Prior to
named
that,
it.
he was looking like a very valuable piece. So I think that's what True to look like
Just keep
pre.
talking. There's another first baseman out there. Shoot, I forgot his name already. He was on the Marlins. I actually went to the Marlins just to find him. He was originally on the Cubs, went to the Marlins.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. The name
You know
is
what I'm talking about, right? He's a power hitter. He's a lefty power hitter.
Lance Caulfield.
Caulfield, yeah. I think that is your high and your low. I mean, I think you could get higher than Caulfield, but if you're gonna, pick that mold, you're obviously hoping for Caulfield, and your low would be Grimes.
All right.
I
Yep.
I guess there's some risk there. But
Giving up
overall,
that 45 pick for that when I think there was a real chance that True was there at 7. Maybe he wouldn't be,
at
but
7,
giving up the second rounder for that, I don't know.
potential actually. Yeah, you know what? I'm agreeing with you because Andy was not going to pick him. At least I don't think so. Um, Florida loves their pitchers. I mean, maybe you can say maybe the Mets, maybe Oakland, maybe. I think Pittsburgh. I
Yeah.
think I actually thought that Larry Fay was going to go to Pittsburgh, and obviously he traded out. So Pittsburgh definitely won that because I had a feeling that he was going to go too.
All right.
Anyway, so that's your least favorite pick. My least favorite. Oh, sorry, you had one more point.
I do have another
Go on.
least favorite.
Go on.
I have a way of being pessimistic, but let's hear what you have to say about what you have written down.
I actually don't like Brian Ross. I know you love him, and it's like we're gonna have some fun here. Brian Ross, I don't see star potential. I see a good, solid. You can pick the ball shortstop, FCM shortstop, but his offensive upside is it's pretty average. I don't really see much in his offensive profile that says, "Hey, let's pick him in the top 10."
Yeah,
He might have good
you're coming.
contact. He does not have elite speed. Yeah, he could get on base a little bit, but he doesn't really have much power. He might hit 10 home runs. I just don't see a star player in Brian Ross to say, "Hey, let's pick him up."
So,
Like if I listen,
uh,
if I'm gonna go for a home run here for a middle infielder in the top 10, I'm going with Fingers. I'm going with Aragon because I know at least if they're gonna be great, they're gonna be great at something to be an all-star, to be maybe not an MVP, but they're gonna be great at something to become a Hall of Famer. Brian Ross is just gonna be your solid up the middle guy who you want to replace at some point after
I
8 to
do
10
agree
years.
that Fingers has the higher side. Um, when I look at Ross, I think if he gets to like let's say 88 overall, I think you're looking at 85 contact, you're looking at 95 eye, you're looking at 80. He's not a prolific base stealer, but I think he'll
Okay, so
be
so
like
what you're
20
saying is
to.
he's going to look like an above average player that's going to look cute on your team, but you're not really going to want to save the last dance for him.
I think the switch. I
You're gonna
think
you're gonna you're gonna spot him. You're gonna spot him ninth in the order, and
I don't agree
you're
with that.
just gonna be there.
I think the switch hitter makes all the difference in the world. I think that I would be 100% it was just a righty, but I think the switch hitting makes all the difference in the world for how I feel about Ross.
I think Russ is just gonna be a good major leaguer. You're gonna forget about him as soon as he retires, and he's gonna be. You're gonna want to replace him after. You know what? He might be as good as, and maybe this is a little bit generous here, as Richard Hounsell. They might be the same player.
As who?
Richard Hounsell, he's on Seattle. He was a long time Yankee. They might be the same player. Good player. No qualms against him. But if we're going to go top 5, I want a stud. I want a star.
Yeah, I don't see that comparison just because Hounsell was never the prolific middle infielder that Ross can be.
I think his defense was a lot better. If let me quickly go back to like an old file. I think his defense was a lot better when he was in his prime. I'm gonna go back to like
Had a pretty damn good prime, and he's had good longevity too. I guess the overall numbers don't look that great
I'm
because his
not
prime was all
I'm
that
not
long.
saying that Hounce isn't a bad player. I'm not saying that Ross is gonna be a bad player. But if you're gonna go top 10, you want a star.
Yeah, I just don't know what the, you know.
You want a star. We're gonna go with our least favorite. That's my least favorite.
All right, yeah,
I
I
don't
hear
think. I
you.
don't. I look. Listen, he's not gonna bust. I think he's gonna be a. I guess you're right about Hansel. I'm looking at Hansel right now. 83. I'm looking when he was 24 years old. 83 arm and peaked out. By the way, 83 arm, 93 range, 86 fielding average.
Yeah,
Uh,
Ross is a top end defensive player.
I just think he's gonna be a, you know, middle of the road, good player. Nothing spectacular. You're not
Yeah,
gonna hate him, but you're not exactly going to love him either. He's not gonna be a franchise player.
I definitely agree that there's definitely a cap to where his offensive game is going to be. He's not going to retire, and his OPS is going to be above 800. That's certainly not happening. It probably won't even be above like 780. Um, but I think if he's playing, if his top years are around that 780, 800 mark, I think those seasons are going to be so valuable.
Okay. I mean, it's hard to find a shortstop, so maybe you have a I see Texas Tornadoes with you, but I don't know. I'd rather get someone else and then fill out my shortstop position. So let's go to the middle rounds. Favorite
Well,
11 to
I do have
20.
I do have one more pick to hate on before we move on.
Okay, I thought we were only picking one player. Okay, you gonna go through the whole top
No,
10?
I got a couple double hits over here. Not in every category, but a couple of them.
All right, all right.
One pick that another pick that I didn't like in the top 10 was Mike Buckman. He went eighth overall to the Angels.
Young
The
catcher.
reason I don't like this pick is because of one major reason, because his contact versus righties right now is 56 and his overall is 67. Um, I don't see that ever developing above, for instance, 75.
Yeah, magic number 70.
He's still going to be useful because he is a catcher. There's no, but if I'm in that spot and I'm the Angels, I prefer a player like Masato Kitakawa, like much more at 10 as opposed to Mike Buckman. I think Buckman sort of sucked some people in with the age. Um, People see that young 16-year-old and they're like, oh, this guy has a ton of upside, which he does. He does have a lot of upside. I think the offensive profile is going to be rough for him when it's all said and done.
Definitely gonna sweat it out to get to 70 contact. Huge power potential though. Good, I guess above average defensive ability. Um, I don't hate on the pick, but I see where you're coming from. That's definitely a risk and a half. So I mean I don't have a second hate pick. I think they're all pretty solid in their own way. And even I think Nance is going to be a good player. I don't think he's going to be great. He might be great. I'm not sure, but I think Nance also has
Yeah,
good.
I definitely wasn't all in on these. There was players I liked more at that spot, but I don't think we have to go too deep into that pick. I don't think it was all that
Yeah,
intriguing of
no.
a conversation.
So let's move on. 11 through 20.
All right.
Your favorite.
My favorite 11 through 20. I'm going to go right to the back end of the 20. I just threw some shade at the Angels, but I'm going to make it up real quick by A's towards Kevin Schaefer. He went 20th to the Angels. I think Schaefer just has a ton of room for growth. I like everything about his profile. He throws good pitches. He has a good build, and he's out of that territory that pitchers are sort of hard to project when they have really low overalls, when they're 52, 53, something like that. But his overalls already out of that range, so you have a better idea of the build he's shaping up to be. So I really like a lot that Kevin Schaefer brings to the table.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's a good safe pick. Um, my pick actually, and I wouldn't. This is like rare of me to do this because I like defense. Scott Miller, I think he could be a bona fide bat. It's possible that his contact does not go as high as you would want it to, But at 90, with all that upside, 19 years old Scott Miller, he could be a prolific DH. And I hate saying that because he's a DH and you can't put him anywhere else. Possibly you could put him at first
I
base
think you can
because
put him at first
yeah,
base.
it's possible you could put it. Actually, yeah, 58
That
on,
helps him out
70
a
range.
lot
Yeah,
because
actually, you know
it'll give
what?
your
That
lineup.
actually increases my love towards him. I think Scott
Yeah,
Miller could be a hell of a pick. Because I think the bat's going to be there. Um, 60 contact. I don't think I'm sweating as much about the contact being, low with all that upside.
yeah, I'm with you. The upside is so massive with
It's
Miller.
massive.
That is
It's
that is
massive.
contact. If he
His
gets if he gets well into those 90s, I don't think the contact's an issue at all, and you're really gonna love that power. And
Oh yeah, and he will also get on base and
yeah,
potentially
so if he can
get free
fulfill that
walks.
upside, he'll be a hell of a hitter.
My I had a second pick here, and it's another like risk pick. I think the safe pick obviously is Schaefer, but the other pick I'm throwing a little bit of love at is Russ Dean. Actually, I had him on my board. I think he's one of those picks that if he hits, he could be really tremendous, huge strikeout power. But we've also seen this build fail, like all builds. I just think Russ Dean is a well-rounded pitcher. Low ground ball rate, and I guess that's a huge negative on him. But I'm curious to see what Russ Dean's going to become in the years
Yeah,
ahead. Really
my challenge
curious.
would be out to the FCMers to go find a top end pitcher in our file that has a ground ball percentage in that neighborhood and what their stats look like because it's not going to be good. So I'm on the total opposite boat on Rustin. I have no interest in him. I don't think he's going to be any good.
Is that our bridge to our least favorite?
No, he didn't make my list, my exact list for least favorite, but he was certainly in the running. I, I think he's a great candidate for the least favorite. I think he's fairly useless. Um, all right, so for my least favorite, I'm really gonna piss off the American Mike after he gave himself an A+ in his own draft ratings.
Ooh.
But I really did not like Jose Zamudia. He went 16th to Seattle. The big issue with Zamudia in my mind is once again a common theme of the contact. It's going to lag so far behind. It's going to be really tough for that to be productive. In addition to that, the health being 93, I don't like hating on guys for the health because better health is better, but that health is going to be a huge eating in factor to his progression. So like when I look at Zamudia, I see someone that might have a fancy overall when it's done, but he's going to do as close to nothing as humanly possible.
Um, I'm not a big fan of the pick because you've seen that build almost become a Hall of Famer, but you've also seen that build fail, and I feel like we've seen it fail more
Yeah,
than we've
absolutely.
seen. What was that guy's name who hit 500 home runs? Who is not a Hall of Famer, by the way.
Uh,
He's. I
I
don't
know
care if he's hit 500.
he had a stint on
He,
my team for like 2 seasons at the back
he's
end of his
got like a
career.
700 OPS. He is no.
He was a good player. I mean, and he
He's a
was
good
better
player.
than Zamudia will be.
He's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but if we're gonna look at the 500 home runs and say he's a Hall of Famer, no. You gotta look at Beisel, yep, or Beisel, tomato.
Yeah. So Beisel was a better player than Zamudia. I think his contact was
But
even
I
less.
think they're the same build. There's definitely the same build. We've
This is
seen
a
that
similar build,
countless.
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely the same build. I actually don't like the other Seattle pick, and I totally disagree with his A+ rating. I don't like Riji Nasagawa. Nagaga.
Well, see,
Naga.
I did like Nagasawa.
Really, you did? Because I don't see anything great with him. I don't see anything great. I see an average player who doesn't have much power. Yes, he might have 90 contact, but I think he's just going to be a decent outfielder.
Yes, if you're playing him in the corner outfield, I agree. But because he can play center, I
He
think that
also,
makes all the difference in the
he's
world.
not playing center field. Also, he has a low health.
Why not?
He has no range. Well, I know you're going to say 86 range, but you put a guy with 74 speed out there.
I have no problem with it. I think Nagasawa. I don't think speed. I don't think mogul factors in speed all that much with defense. I think the range matters more.
If Maddie was here, he'd school you on that.
Mm. He can go ahead and do that. That's fine.
I just wasn't. I didn't see any wow factor with Nagasawa. I didn't
Yeah,
see it. Didn't see it. And you know
he
what?
did.
One
I
A,
thought he was
one A hate, one B hate was both of his outfielders. I just don't like either of the outfielders that he selected.
it is funny talking about his A+ rating for his own draft, and you're just like, what are you looking at, dude? But anyways, um,
um,
he would have been much better in just giving his comments because now it sounds stupid. But all right, I'm gonna throw some more hate at another player in the 10 to 20 range, 11 to 20, I should say, and that would be Edgar Vasquez. He went 14th to Florida. And the conversation is very similar to what we just talked about with Rustine. Go show me a top end pitcher in our file that has a ground ball percentage in the 25%, 30ish percent range. You might find a couple, but
those numbers aren't forever now.
You're right,
Those numbers are
but
not
they
forever.
never deviate far from that initial estimate. The furthest I see them deviate from that initial estimate is like 5%. That estimate is pretty good.
Yeah, I hear you. We have a special guest here, by the way. Mr. G Money, George Fitzpatrick, has made his way somehow onto the scene here. Is your mic on, George?
Oh, is it on? You tell me.
Yes, it is on. We hear you loud and clear.
God, see, I'm used to the terrible quality of talk shoe. I'm not sure if my voice is going to sound more or less obnoxious through like the quality Google Hangout system. Probably hear my dog in the background.
I was going to say whatever that thing was in the background. I definitely heard that.
That is a Boston Terrier specifically.
All right, George. So since you're here on a short stint, do you have any thoughts or anything that you want to put your 2 cents in?
I always think it's very dangerous to agree with Peter, but I think I would lean toward making Brian Ross my pick, and here like my number one pick if I had it, and here's why. I think you're really understating his upside with the bat. I know there isn't a ton of power potential there, but in terms of like a number 2 type hitter who draws for a ton of walks, like look at those walk totals from his his minor league numbers, and on top of that, I think he's going to steal a lot more bases than you think. Like the speed of 78 is a little bit misleading. His steal tendency is actually a little bit higher than that, and I think he's probably going to steal a team on 20 to 25 bases. And if he can give you like a 380 on base percentage with that, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility, even if he doesn't get all the way toward 92, that's your number 2 hitting shortstop that may not seem like a franchise player in terms of outright Hall of Fame production, but is definitely the guy that you always keep in your lineup and can move around depending on what players you get there. I always think sometimes you shoot a little too high. Some people will shoot a little too high on infielders and won't accept the really good guy that they can just put in there and use as a utility knife in their lineup depending on where they can put him. I think it's not inconceivable that Ross could hit lead off in some lineups, and he can definitely hit 2 and would definitely not be a 0 toward the back end of your lineup, like a lot of infielders are.
All I'm saying is that if I'm going to select guy, I'm not going to play small ball when I'm drafting. I want a home run when I'm picking a guy.
Let's look at the other option. Let's look at the other options there. If you want to swing for the fences,
I'm not saying literal power, by the way. I'm saying
if you want an elite bat, Ford and Truitt, we've both seen those builds either flame out or be successful before. And it's not like either of them don't have problems. Like Truitt has a very low strikeout number, and he's probably not going to hit for an high as average as you probably expect. And some of those guys don't end up developing into the same kind of players as like the high strikeout first baseman. Aaron Ford looks solid, but I don't really see a ton of star potential with him either. You could take the risk with Aragune, but I think he's really more of a third baseman than a second baseman. His range isn't elite, and I think he'd probably be an average defensive second baseman at most, even when he peaks out. I think he's a solid player, but I also think that there's a possibility that his bat, especially if he doesn't develop into that 92 range, that his bat never comes around against righties enough to the point where you're getting elite production anyway. So, I think Ross among Fingers and Aragune would be the safest selection. And I'm almost more inclined that if I'm going to go with an upside third baseman, that Miller isn't that much work. That a guy like Miller might actually be like pretty good in terms of the bat. So I don't know. I definitely think Ross is the best of those three middle infielders, though. That I'm fairly certain of. And if he wouldn't have been my first pick, I definitely wouldn't have had him drop lower than second on my board.
Man, the Ross love is real. I mean, listen, I agree with you guys when you guys say that he's going to be a safe major leaguer, second year.
He's going to be a top 3 shortstop
player,
just because of the landscape that he plays in.
Maybe. All right, maybe. But if Aragon, for instance, if he hits, we're talking like Jeff Kent type guy, and you're gonna have a potential Hall of Famer. I feel like I'd rather take that risk and I could find a guy like Brian Ross, similar to Brian Ross, and I don't think I can find other Aragon.
The huge difference is, though, that a guy like Jeff Kent is way more valuable in real baseball than in Mogul. Like,
I just like players.
Yeah, I know, and I love me some Jeff Kent. Don't get me wrong. Magnum PI at second base, but the real issue is that without elite defense in that middle of the infield, you almost have to do some stuff with your pitching staff in order to get it to work properly. That's making sure that you have two good defenders up the middle is one of the easiest steps to make sure your team's at least performing with some stability.
I don't think
with Aragon.
I don't think Aragon is. I don't think you're sweating with Aragon at second base.
Yeah, I don't think you're giving him credit that he's going to be able to progress. I know defense doesn't move that much, but I think his range is going to reach 90. I don't know who's going to be sweating that. I think Aragon will be more than a sufficient second baseman when it's all said and done.
I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to be a good glover.
But looking at his profile with the best tool being his arm, I'd almost rather have him at third. And if you look at his minor league numbers, there's a couple of seasons at second base that are a little shakier than others in terms of range. But at third, he actually looks to be a little more consistent, even though there are less games there. So I think that's the long-term position where he ends up sticking. He's not a bad pick, certainly, and I think he shouldn't have probably gotten that much lower than there. But in terms of, I'm not sure that at the end of the day, when he fully develops, that you're going to end up with a significantly better player than Brian Ross if they both end up hitting.
Okay. All right. I mean, sure.
I mean, I'm also the person. I'm also the person in the league who values middle infielders probably more than anyone else. So, obviously, if I don't like Ross, that should be a red flag right there.
I'm just surprised at how much love he's getting right now. I just think he's just going to be an average bat, and if he's going to be a good player, he's going to look like Hounsell, who was a good player. He was a good player. But he was
Hounsell with better defense is probably closer to a great player than a good player.
Okay, but I think Ross and Hounsell that's your lookalike. Well, that's your peak player, I guess. Any other thoughts? Any picks you particularly didn't?
Just so the FCM world knows, I'm not on board with that comparison.
No, and I'm not positive either because I don't have 800 files put up in my 12 screen bedroom that I assume Jmaine has in the Jmaine Dome in Secaucus, New Jersey.
It is 2 screens, brother, and it's all up in the brain, baby. It's all up in the mind.
Oh God, this has already gotten out of control. I also want to criticize Jmaine for the Russ Dean thing, but I don't think it's for the reason that Peter said, which is I like that we can complain about the pick in 2 completely different ways. The ground ball stuff is a problem. Sure, I'll grant you that. And obviously, I don't really like extreme fly ball pitchers anyway, because I think it limits who you can play in the outfield. But above and beyond that, that 91 peak isn't as good as it looks, considering 93 endurance and 90 health. Now, a lot of times when we see these players hit that are low overall, high peak pitchers, one of those 2 tools is usually low. Either it's endurance in the 70s or health in the 70s. With both of those, and I've taken players like this in the past. I remember taking in the top 10, I took a pitcher with Baltimore who looked really good on paper, had a similar build to Russ Dean, but never ended up developing control outside of the mid 70s, and I eventually had to move him to reliever. I think that might be what Russ Dean is headed towards. And try converting a 93 endurance down to reliever and see how that goes. Like that's going to be a tough build to make a closer. I mean, his strikeout potential looks great, and I actually think that he might have a little more hope than some of the other picks in this regard, because it doesn't look like he gives up a ton of home runs. But I would not be betting. I would not be betting on him being a successful major league pitcher.
I'm just curious. Can a man be? Well, actually, we'll pause
Can a
on that
man
one.
be curious?
Pause on that one. But
we have changed the podcast.
I actually almost stopped myself. I was like, oh no. I am curious on how he develops, though. I think you're absolutely right, though, with the high endurance, high health. His 91 peak may be a little bit inflated. Probably is inflated. But I think his strikeout numbers are real. I think he has to hit everything in order to be a successful pitcher in this league, and that's a problem.
I think even if he hits everything, I think he's an SP5 at best. Like a terrible bet when you're talking about a top half of the first round.
Especially it's bad when it's an SP5 that you're paying like an SP2 as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah,
you guys want to pick a guy who bunts the guy to second base as your first overall pick? No, I'm kidding.
I don't believe in bunting. I have strict instructions to send my team over Trump's wall if any of them bunt in any situation.
Are you the Brian Kenny of FCM right now? Anyone understands?
Look, not all of us work for MLB Network, so we're not as familiar.
All right, so let's jump into our favorite 21 to 30. Actually,
let's see if George has any love to give 10 through 20 before we move on.
Okay, I actually like Reggie Nagasawa. I think I'm a big fan of using the outfield as your time to platoon and try to get the most out of the value that you can get from those spots. I think his power is actually probably a bit understated at 69. If you actually look at the numbers, it seems like he favors home runs a little bit more than he favors doubles, which is a good sign. Obviously, I like left-handed bats. His defense should be fairly good, and he may even have a chance to be, okay in center field. The health's a bit of a worry, but if you're platooning him, it's not as much of a worry. And if anything, he just dropped right before the draft. So his true peak range might be something more like an 88 or an 89. And if he gets up to that range, you're going to get some, I think, fairly elite production, especially if you have a cheap right-handed bat off the bench to caddy him at either left field or center. I think that he'll end up putting up better numbers than you think for a while, and you can keep a guy like him around without necessarily an outrageous cost or taking a risk that he's going to drop too much because of his health. I think you can. I think you're going to get good value from that pick, especially compared to some of the higher risk bats that looked like they were going in that range, like McWork or Zamudia or Scott Miller.
Okay, I can hear you on that one. I just think that he just doesn't have enough upside as other guys such as Nick Jones and Martin Milford in terms of production upside.
Maybe he doesn't, but I still think
overall he's going to have a good solid.
I think overall he's oftentimes I tend to swing for the fences less than a lot of other people drafting. I don't end up with a lot of stars, but I definitely end up with a lot of, that guy, who ends up in the major leagues for 10 years and is kind of good. You comp him 4 times somehow, and then eventually he retires. Those sorts of guys I end up with a lot, and Nagasawa looks like that kind of player to me. Like a good left fielder who you're never particularly excited to have, and isn't necessarily someone you're building your franchise around, but you'll find that he's a little harder to replace than you might think.
Maybe because he's lefty.
Maybe that probably has something to do with it.
That's a big factor in it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to buy into the Nagasawa topic. I wouldn't draft him, but I'm starting to buy into it. Okay. Any picks you want to hit on, or you want to move up to the back end of the first round?
No, I think I've hated pretty coherently.
Okay, so 21 to 30. I want to start since G is here and he knows it. I love the third baseman he selected, Kevin Jensen. I think if we're going to think about a potential star, I mean, he's not a sleeper, he's a first round pick, but a star from the back end of the first round, I think Kevin Jensen's that. He already possesses a Gold Glove talent, and I think he will have a well-rounded bat. He's not going to walk a lot, but I think he will have elite power, and his numbers show. Hell, he's going to have 1,000 OPS. I mean, it's not going to show in the major leagues year in year out, but his high school stats really show he's a legit power threat. Any objections there, Peter? Because I know G doesn't disagree with me.
No, I like Jensen a lot. Just to throw a little ice on the fire would be the get any better than 80. It'd be a miracle if it got to 80. That'll hurt sort of the OPS bottom line that you were talking about. I think his vitals for offense are going to look better than his end production, but when you consider how good of a defensive player he's going to be at third, when I look at Jensen, maybe down the line averaging maybe 780 OPS over there with elite defense, I think that's really valuable.
I think he's gonna be better than that. I drafted a guy, and actually G had him for a while. I think he's on Atlanta right now. Shoot, what was his name? Justin Clark. I remember drafting Justin Clark thinking I got a guy like Jensen, and it definitely was not the case. But I remember he had limited upside, and just a little bit more upside. I thought he could have been a star. I think Kevin Jensen's that. I don't see MVPs up in his mantle, but I definitely see 800 plus OPS, a guy you'd want to just keep there at third base, don't even worry about him type guy. And I know G knows that I'm upset about that because I hit him up as soon as we got done. We ended our trade up discussions. I really wanted Jensen. I didn't get him.
I only later pulled in the draft the trade up to trade down move, which I am very proud of, especially because it did it to Andy's pick. But in this case, to give you a little insight into the Montreal front office, I would have actually probably taken Jensen at 16, which is where I was originally picking. But I traded that pick to Mizzy, hoping that either Jensen or Cecil Hayes was still there when I came back. And I think I got a little bit lucky. I think I got a little bit lucky that at least one of the guys I wanted was that he was still there. But we probably would have been talking about him as a mid first round pick had I ended up keeping that pick and not trading it.
I love little stories like that. So, all right, just give me a percent, just between me and you, I guess, and no one's listening. What were the chances you were going to trade me that pick?
If Jensen had fallen to that, 0. If neither Jensen or Hayes had fallen to that, then we could have probably done something, but it would have taken more than what you were offering.
Yeah, fuck. All right, Peter, what was your favorite pick of the back half?
So this is probably topical because we're already on the topic of third basemen. Jensen was the guy I was considering at 23, but when it came down to it, when I was looking at Zane Fisher, I see Zane Fisher as a much higher end offensive player, and I think it even tracks back to what we were talking about earlier for swinging for the fences, rather a safe pick rather than just playing it safe. I think Kevin Jensen is a safer pick. Zane Fisher, I think the upside for a player like that is much higher, and I think the offensive upside is definitely higher with Zane Fisher.
I'm going to disagree with you. I'm having PTSD over Joel Tice looking at Zane Fisher. I would much rather have Kevin Jensen.
Joel Tice is nothing like Zane Fisher.
No. I'm talking about defense. He's going to kick. Zane Fisher's going to kick the ball, and he's going to piss you off when you're going to play him at third. His offense is going to be different. I'm talking about defense.
I don't know about that. Like if you go back and look at Joel Tice's like really old like minor league numbers and stuff like that, you just saw some horror stories there. Like those numbers are not great at third, like a 940-ish, like third base, fielding percentage at third base. I'm inclined to think that that's at least functional at third. If the other, if he's at least like getting like has decent range. And as you look at those numbers, like he's still getting to enough balls and throwing enough people out that I think that should be at least not the Tysian at third. I will say that.
Tysian.
I want to add something else to that. To get a bat into your lineup at third base like that opens up so many possibilities to improve your lineup, because you can get another first base type bat into your lineup without sacrificing your defense too much. So when you can get a big time bat into a position that's most teams are weak at, I think it's an X factor in your own lineup.
Okay, I can buy into that. G, do you have any favorite picks back half?
Well,
I mean, obviously love your pick, but you know.
Yeah, I was a fan of my pick. I suppose because I said I was potentially looking at Cecil K's, that's the one I should praise. So let's go with Cecil K's. I think when you're looking for projectable arms like that, like sometimes it's hard to see what they can do well. But I think in Cecil K's case, I think you can see that controls far enough over his overall. Plus, you get a little bit of that bonus of power in there too, to the point where I think his upside is very good. I think Detroit's really good at finding like arms like this, where like they're in that 35 to 40th percent like ground ball range, where yes, they're a fly ball pitcher, but it doesn't really kill you to have them up there. I think he's going to be pretty solid one day. I wouldn't freak out too much about the home runs. A couple of those seasons are good, and when you're that low at 52 overall, it's really hard to read the tea leaves as to how many home runs you're going to give up. The health's low enough to the point where I think that 85 is some pretty legit upside, and I think if he gets near there, he's definitely at least in a major league rotation, and he's probably a fairly productive piece in the major league rotation.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna jump on. I like Hayes. I don't love him. I like him. The only problem, he's 16. He is a ton of upside. You never know how he's gonna end up. I'm just hesitant to pick up power pitchers. And if they peak lower than if it's like 84, 85, wherever it is, I feel like those guys get beat up a lot. And I hope he doesn't peak out at 84, 85, because then he'll become a bad practice pitcher. I feel like power pitchers need to be elite, because if you're not elite, you're pretty much unusable. If you're a ground ball pitcher, you could get away with being lesser than the elite guy because you have a good defense behind you, whatever. I'm just afraid that K's, I think it's a K's, I'm afraid that he becomes slightly average to above average. That's my only fear about K's. It's my only fear.
Yeah, my thoughts on K's were interesting. There seemed to be a lot of groaning in the chat when he went off the board. I was a little surprised, but not all that surprised. I think the 16-year-old, the fact that he's 16 years old adds to some of like the wow factor, makes him look like a sexy prospect. But I'm with Jmaine in terms of the build. The amateur stats aren't that impressive. I realize he's a 52 playing in high school, but that jumps off the page to me. When I look at K's, I'm seeing an average future major league pitcher. I could be totally wrong. He could get well into the 90s and be super productive, but if I had to put my money on something, I would say he's going to turn into just an average pitcher. That's my take on him.
It's a gamble that I'm very hesitant on taking, because I've drafted a guy like him, and I was like, oh, he's going to be a power pitcher, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Becomes average, and it's like, fuck. That's just personal. Like I that's happened to my draftees a lot. So I'm definitely hesitant on a guy like K's. Did I talk about the guy I like? Oh, I already did. How about least favorite guys?
Okay, this one I think is kind of interesting because I think a lot of time we see at the back of the first round where we take risks on speed guys, but this guy isn't a usual speed guy.
3 for 3 here. We're all gonna say speed guy.
Joel Miller. Like, here's my question about it. Other than steal bases, what does he do? He's not going to hit for contact. I don't think he's going to hit for much power. And I think even if he was just going to draw walks, that would probably be good enough for this speed with his average defense to the point where I'd be willing to take a shot on him. But he's probably not going to do that either. I think, especially considering he's only projected to peak out in an 81. Let's say he develops on an average level and gets to exactly 81. He's got probably contact versus lefties and righties, and power versus lefties and righties, all in the mid to high 70s. That's not going to really be anything other than probably a fourth outfielder or a number 9 hitter on a team that really needs someone to fill the spot and not be embarrassing in the process. I don't see first round starter upside unless he gets well beyond that peak. And he's 17. It's possible, but even then, let's project him out even further to get into even if he gets into like that 90, even let's say he peaks out at a 90, I don't think he's going to be as productive as he looks on paper. And I think you're always going to be a little disappointed that his OPS is, in the 700s. And even though he's stealing, 45, 50 bases for you a year, he's not really doing much else. Yeah, I think that's the end game on him.
Completely agree. I see a 70 contact fourth outfielder, even if he, that's if he makes the major league roster. Also, like, his defense doesn't even wow at you either. He's not even going to be a bona fide fourth outfielder. He's not going to throw out Vladimir Guerrero type guys. And yeah, he is. Yeah. That's why I wanted my fourth outfielder.
You want your fourth outfielder, a Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame fourth outfielder. That's you're damn right.
So in your world, would Roberto Clemente would have come off the bench just so you could bring him out in the 9th inning to throw people out?
He's a quadruple A fodder, huh? No.
Yes.
No, but like, I just don't see. Yeah, he has good defense, but I don't see elite defense coming at him. But yeah, but anyway, he doesn't have contact or power or an eye. So what good is he for? Yeah, he's 17 years old, and yes, you do see leadoff guys spike in contact, but we're currently at, hell, it might top out at 75 tops.
Yeah, I'll just tie a bow on it, and I think it's GM seeing the speed and sort of getting the hard shapes in their eyes. But I agree with everything
that was about the least dirty version of that phrase that could have been said.
I actually thought you were gonna say something weird.
Oh, I don't know where you guys head is at.
I said I was curious on some guy. Okay, so anyway,
let's go.
Gee, I'm glad you're here. By the way, this is I like having the third person on the team.
Yes,
a good little flow to it.
Although it's not Mike Sweet, because he will suck up too much air at the Google Hangouts for anyone else for a third voice to be in here.
I wanted Mike to be on.
I love you, Mike. This is said with love.
I enjoy
this is said with love and mild shade.
We used to play a lot of Rocket League. We haven't played in a long time. We used to talk shit all the time. It was awesome talking to him. It's been a while. Mike, come back. All right, so let's go into the second round. We're not gonna go in tiers, top, middle, bottom half. Favorite second round pick, least second round pick. Peter, I'll start with you. Who's your favorite second round pick?
Yeah, so for one of my favorite second rounders, I went right to the top of the round with Homer Wilkins. Another bit of love for the Angels. I think the Angels had a pretty good draft. Homer Wilkins is not a sure thing, but I like a lot of what he's bringing control above the overall. I realize at 48 overall that it can be a little tricky because there's sort of an exponential growth to overall, whereas the vitals sort of stick around when a guy's rated that low. I think that as he gets better, the control will keep pace and be good enough. He gives a team the option of going to the bullpen or the rotation. I think if I were in control of his progression, I think I would leave him in the bullpen to start, and then if things are going really good, send him to the rotation. But as of right now, I think I'd count on him being a bullpen piece and potentially a future closer.
Yeah, Homer Wilkins is one of those. I struggle with a guy like him. I usually stay away and thinking that I don't know type guy, but the more I see Homer Wilkins, the more I like him. He is one of those two-way guys. He could be a 70 endurance, completely fine starter, or you could shift him into the closer role and he'd be just fine there too. Curious to see where his control will be at. I feel like good control with those lower overall guys. I want to see at least 59. Otherwise, that might. But if it hits 88 to 85, that's completely fine.
Yeah.
And obviously, that movement's going to be moving up too.
And remember, the vitals are lower with quote unquote natural relievers anyway. That 55 is like functionally higher than that.
Good point. Yeah, I like Homer Wilkins. He was not my favorite pick though. I was a big fan of Timothy Davis in Florida, and it's weird because like I said before about K's,
you're going totally opposite direction.
I know.
We're disagreeing on so much in this draft.
I know, but I wanted to pick Davis myself, and I guess I was just sticking to my gut here and going with Davis. But it's weird because I'm going to go against everything I've been saying about K's here. I just have a feeling that Timothy Davis might grab a jump here or there. He has a nice fastball. He doesn't have that high health. I could be wrong, but I think my pick is Timothy Davis with hesitance.
So I don't have to.
Gee, any thoughts?
So far, no, I'm still here.
I know.
I know. Without me talking every 20 seconds, how do you know I'm still here? I like Homer Wilkins as well. My opinion on that is that he was not my pick for this, but I'm saying to weigh into the reliever starter discussion, because his endurance is all the way up at 43 already before you've done anything, I would convert him to being a starter. And this is because it seems the way Mogul manages the bullpen, it tends to throw relievers out there to max out their appearance in terms of like endurance. So basically, if a guy has 43 endurance, and usually roughly that means he's probably going to get through like 40 something pitches. That means if he's your closer is going to come in the eighth inning all the time. And, that can be an advantage if he ends up being really elite, but it could also be a bit of a disadvantage as well. And that's why some of these like converted back starters to relievers don't do so well, because they're always out for such long stretches for the most part. I think if I were going to like argue for a pitcher, I think Nick Stambaugh was a pretty good pick by San Diego, but I think the guy I want to go with here is Trev Courtney. I think that Trev Courtney offers a lot of upside that you don't normally see in a second round bat. I think that he draws an absolute ton of walks, should strike out at a fairly reasonable clip. And his contact's honestly not that bad that it's not unreasonable that he could get up into the 80 contact range as well, which gives you a nice little bonus that he's not necessarily going to be like a 230 hitter that has a ton of power. He could be a 260 hitter that has quite a bit of power. I know his defense isn't great, but I think if the rest of your infield is fine, you could theoretically play him at first base without it really hurting you all that much. I find that Mogul can get really generous with what they consider reasonable first base play. And even some people out of position I've seen do relatively well at first base without being a complete butcher. And I think he's going to be a pretty good player for Houston down the road.
Yeah, I'd love to offer up counterpoints to that. Actually, I really do like the bat build, but we're looking at a player that appears to have jumped already this season. And I'm no mathematician, but it looks like he only has 19 upside at 20 years old. So when I look at him, I think he's shaping up to be a guy that peaks at 22 or 23 and doesn't peak at all that impressive of a rating. And you're just left with a second rounder that you could have had more with. So Trev Courtney wouldn't have been a pick of mine just because I like a pick that has a star potential. And I don't see that with Courtney at all.
I agree with Peter, but I do think that he will be a decent platoon option at first base, being a left-hander. I think he definitely has a little bit of upside. You'll never see him above 83. He's not going to be one of those guys who like stair climbs his way up to 90, 95, whatever. He's going to stay at the 80, 83 range. He's going to have power. He's obviously going to get on base at the eye. His contacts, he might be able to sweat that out. He might be good against righties. You might see like a 68 contact, 69 contact, but against righties, he could be above 70. So he's going to be platoonable, which is not a word.
That's a word. Make it a word. It's fine.
Platoonable.
Everybody gets it.
I'm not in love with this pick. For just like Peter, I want to see more upside here. Yeah, I want more of a star. I actually, the more I look at another first baseman who is actually a catcher, the more I like him. Louis Jones, Pittsburgh, 91, a huge upside here. You don't look at him as a catcher; you look at him as a first baseman. He might be pretty decent when it's all said and done. I'm curious where his overall game is going to be, but he might get to 85 contact, maybe 90 power. We'll see. I might be pretty.
No, I think Peter might actually play him at catcher because I believe Peter is a handling truther. The last time I spoke to him about that,
handling truther.
Yeah, he's on my team, so I don't have to worry about this problem.
But Gilly definitely took advantage of the fact that everyone looked at this guy as a catcher. Meanwhile, he's actually a first baseman. I think in the second round, you got yourself a pretty good bat.
Right. Plus, everyone was confused by the comments Gilly was making about his spreadsheet or algorithm or whatever secret plan he has to take over the world and FCM. To the point where they're like, "Oh yeah, he's still on the board." I didn't even realize that.
Well, we only pay attention to his theater draw-ups anyway, right, Peter?
Exactly.
Least second round pick. Least favorite second round pick.
Who's the least of a second round picks?
Well, Peter has his little run sheet. Say again?
I'll lead off right here. We already talked about. I wrote down Timothy Davis. We already talked about him. I don't like Timothy Davis. I think he's a bum. Moving on to a new player would be Aaron McCauley. He went to Cleveland, 48th. And I know George will be able to sufficiently also hate on him because he is a certified DH with a bat that's not all that interesting. You'd expect his amateur stats to show more home runs, but it's not.
You'd expect a lot of things from Aaron McCauley. He's not going to give you.
Yeah. His splits are pretty terrible given he's a 64. He shows it as a 64. He shows that 55 contact, 65 eye, not a great eye either. McCauley is just a.
Peter, we lose you there? I think you dropped.
No, I think he's just too depressed to keep talking about him.
There's nothing else to say. I mean,
he looks like he clearly is bad. Moving on.
Yeah, I thought he had a stroke on us. I agree with you, McCauley. He's a guy who's never going to develop it as a FCM quality second baseman, and if you do play him, you're sorry. And if you are going to pick up a guy like McCauley, you better hope that he's going to be a stud as a DH, which it doesn't seem like he will be. Another guy I wasn't in love with, I didn't really like, was Chris Kaprelian, third base, Florida. Though he has upside, I just don't see him. I don't see him as a first baseman that they would love, and I definitely don't see him as a third baseman. I definitely don't see him as DH because I don't think his bat is all that great. I just don't like the defense. I just don't think that he's going to be playable at third base, and then I don't love his bat at first either. So I wouldn't have wasted my pick on Chris Kaprelian, but he seems like a hokey guy. So
yeah, hokey has some he's been very successful drafting historically, but I sometimes I don't see what he sees in guys.
Well, he definitely is not the best offensive drafter. He could probably draft pitchers for days.
Yeah.
But his offensive drafting hasn't been the greatest.
Defend Kaprelian a little bit. I do think he has a lot of upside. So
he does.
I think he'll look awfully good if he gets to 90 or 92 or whatever. But I think
like the classic.
I think that's the one defense. I think he's got a lot of upside.
Peter, he's the guy you want on your team, then you're going to flip him to some other team because he looks nice. That is your quality guy. Get the upside dude who is actually shitty, but you'll trade him. But Hoki's actually going to play him, thinking that he's going to be a star.
And then trade him later to some.
Okay, yeah, trade him later, or comp A him, and no one bids on him. Let's jump into the third round because
wait, no, I didn't get to say someone who sucks.
Who sucks? Gee,
Darren
who sucks?
Mapstone. He's terrible. Moving on.
Who is this? Who is this?
Darren Mapstone. I can't decide if I actually was gonna say.
Oh yeah, yeah.
McCauley.
Oh my God, yeah.
I actually was gonna say McCauley, but because he was the first that caught my eye, and then I reminded myself that Darren Mapstone exists, and I almost think it's a worse pick, not because I think he's necessarily a worse player, but because if you look at that player card on defense, that 81 is going to trick someone into thinking he's actually going to develop into a good defensive player. No, stay away from this man. Like how many times have you ever seen this build work? If your answer is anything other than 0, we have not been playing in the same mogul league.
I actually wouldn't be opposed to completely eradicating all the bad middle. I'm serious. Like they're just
they should be humanely destroyed, and you shouldn't even let you draft them or sign them. Like they just go straight to the free agent pool to retire.
Put the Cletus fuckhats on their name. Make sure you just don't draft a Darren.
A whole family of fuckhats. Darren fuckhat.
But like
it's funny. I totally missed him. Totally missed that.
When you're drafting them, when someone picks a player like him in front of you, you're so pumped because it's just like this is one less player on the board that didn't have to get crossed off my own board.
Oh yeah, so much less work. I don't have to change my window or anything. Just know that nothing of substance was lost before you pick.
All right, let's jump third round because we don't want to spend too much time in the second round.
Third round. One more second rounder before we move on.
Go ahead. Why not?
I wanted to throw a little love at Vlad Pena. This is one of the classic guys that he only needs to get to like 82 to be. I think there's gonna be a lot of similar comments to the pitcher I was talking about earlier, but Vlad Pena can go either to the rotation or as a starter. Classic ground ball guy, controls way above the overall. I think Vlad Pena is just a guaranteed success.
I think he's better used in the bullpen when it's all said and done. I think he'd be more effective there, more valuable there. I don't think he's going to be as great as a starter, but I do like Vlad Pena. I had him on my list. I thought it was a little bit of a reach, but I do like the player nonetheless. So I just think he's better suited in the bullpen. Any thoughts on Pena?
He's fine.
He's fine.
You could do worse.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do worse. I just maybe it's a little bit worse.
He's a little. I think the 77 peak is what's scaring me off of him a bit. In terms of everything else, he's the kind of pitcher I end up drafting a lot of. The 54 endurance is a little weird, but I think you just end up with him as a starter, and he just ends up in the back end of the rotation being productive but not special.
I think you throw him in the bullpen right away.
Mm.
His usage right now is a short relief. I would probably go with that. Third round now. Any favorites?
Who wants to lead off here?
I'll lead off. I like Lamarck Johnson going to Toronto, relief pitcher. We've talked about a guy on LA before with the high ground ball rate. Lamarck Johnson might be a notch below him. I really like his control. We'll see where that movement ends up, but I think at 16 years old, he might have found himself a nice piece in the top half of the bullpen, closing or being as a setup man. I mean, if you want to take the risk, say, hey, you want to start him, push his endurance up, fine. But I think there's a lot to like about Lamarck Johnson. I don't think there'll be many GMs that would disagree with that.
Yeah, I think Johnson's a good pick. I don't think there's much to comment. I think he's pretty actually. Well, I think there will be some growth effects. We've seen this before when players are rated as low as 40. I talked about this a little bit. I think the control will be, when it all works out, I think the control will probably be whatever that gets to as he progresses. But I think he'll be a good pitcher keeping the ball down, and he'll just be a good, effective bullpen piece. I don't think he should be converted or anything like that.
Another guy I was liking was John Post to Arizona. He could be a quality middle relief pitcher. I don't think we're seeing a star here, but a guy who you can depend on the middle relief. I think that's a good find, and because I think that overall this draft kind of died as soon as round 3 hit. There were some guys to get, but there weren't really many picks when you got into the third round.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It definitely felt off the cliff at some point during the third round. I prefer Post to Lamar Johnson if we're comparing the two. I think Post could easily starter or reliever, and I think he'll be probably more effective than Lamar Johnson.
Peter, do you have a favorite?
I guess I'm gonna pat my own back a little bit. I think Lawrence Avenel was a unique opportunity in the third round. I guess we talked about these speed guys a little bit. I think they usually get scooped up earlier than this pick, but when he was still available, as we mentioned, the draft was starting to fall off at this point. I think he was clearly one of the best players on the board, and he's really got some things to like, being that he's a lefty speed guy, which is a surprising rarity in the file right now, and I think he's going to be a really effective base stealer.
I agree. I had him highlighted. Another guy I was surprised he was pat my own back too. Todd Lee. I didn't see many pitchers his build at this stage of the game. I was surprised to get him at 65. I think there's a lot to like. That typical build. He's got a lot of upside. Controls right where you want it. Movements over the overall. I think he could be a nice above average pitcher in this league.
I prefer Todd Lee to Rustine for what that's worth.
Listen, I'm curious about Rustine, man. I'm probably wrong. I didn't draft it though, so it's on Theo. So
did we lose George? I think we lost George.
Have we lost George? Let me confirm. We have lost George with no goodbye, no nothing. We miss you, George, already.
All
right, so just me.
That's a big loss. Can we get Matt to jump on? Can we get Matt to jump on? He just got the link.
I mean, well, he got the link to listen to us. I'll let him answer if he wants to join us with his kind words. But moving on, yes, I did like Avenel. Overall, I was surprised that the speed guys were still on the board, the low end speed guys. I guess a lot of us are probably like waiting for that third round to hit to snag because maybe you saw someone you liked a little bit more in the second round. That's all.
I think that was maybe a thing like 30 years ago, but the waiting has ended long ago for those speed guys. They've been getting scooped early and early, and I think Matt probably started in these speed guys that a lot of people expected to fall to the third, and he was picking them in the late first constantly, and it really just got the ball rolling on that trend ending.
I'll tell a couple of guys I like. Max Olibaro, LA.
Agreed.
Tom Cipollali, whatever, catcher, Detroit. I do like my own pick. I have to. Eric Sullivan. John Post already pointed out, and Houston's Efrain Nicto. I think that he could be a decent player as well.
Nicto is another player. Nicto's got pretty high upside. I don't think he'll be particularly good if he just gets to like 80, but if for some reason the Mogul gods bless him and he gets to like an 88, I think he's a pretty damn good pitcher.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think either or, he could still be effective in the bullpen.
Yeah,
I think he's a guy you could convert to have like 48 to 49 endurance. Stick him in the middle half of the bullpen, he'd be fine there.
It was funny drafting in this round because I had I think 4 picks in this round, and as it was occurring, I was like, oh my god, like what am I gonna? You said it was really the landslide effect. There was one other sort of I guess strange name that I wanted to mention I liked, and that was Terrence Wren. He went to Pittsburgh at pick 82. A little gilly love for Terrence Wren. Range is a serious issue for him. I don't know how his defense will pan out. His bat has potentially huge upside.
Totally agree with that. I actually drafted a guy like him who's now a star, Roscoe Berman, and with the Yankees. But yeah, there's a lot to like about his power. I don't know if his contact's going to be all that, but 16 years old, you never know what you're going to get. Huge upside.
So
yeah, a lot to like there.
A great bet given where we're talking about in the draft. But yeah, Wren was a good pick. Obviously, I was interested in Kieran Cantor. He was just an interesting switch bat. Um, I don't know what his standout skill is yet, but as we're falling off at this point, and he brings some positive stuff to the table.
Yeah. To jump with the guy I didn't like Kent Hurley, the relief pitcher.
That's the same exact
I just,
one I had written down.
Yeah, it was the control that you know I couldn't pull the trigger on Hurley. His power,
It's amazing.
his power,
It's amazing.
His power isn't there. His control isn't there. I just don't see what's there to even draft.
It's amazing that a pitcher like that gets picked above a player like John Post or a pitcher like Lamarck Johnson, pitcher like Ray Honda, even Leon Latero. All those guys are better bets than Ken Hurley. This is.
I think to defend Mike, he saw the peak and said, "How maybe I could get a control movement guy," but he doesn't have the ground ball. He could toss up home runs if he throws it down the middle. No.
Yeah, Ken Hurley's a disaster pick.
Let's jump. Well, I guess you agree with that, and that was your selection as well.
Let's. I might have another in down. Kyle Delaragi to Toronto. Little Canadian hate to cap off the third round.
I think I don't think he's that good, but I think he's gonna be better than Hurley would be.
Yeah, I agree. If I own Delaragi, I'd be sending him to the bullpen because I think that's his only chance of contributing.
Yep, agreed. And whatever he contributes to, it's going to be below his overall. He might just be really, really bad.
Yep.
There's actually nothing that's above his overall that you're going to see. The only thing you like is when you see the ground ball rate.
It's kind of an odd build to see someone like that.
It is odd. You just like to see the 6% very high ground ball rate, which gives you a smidget of a glimmer of hope. Be like, oh, this guy could be okay.
Most pitchers either than their overall or their power over their overall, but he has nothing, and that's very sad.
Okay, let's do a little rapid fire. 4, 5, 6. Who you like in the fourth?
Fourth round. One that stood out to me was a pick of yours, Sam Warden, 110th, 20th in the round. He has quite the ground ball percentage. You hardly ever see 70%. So it'll be. I think he's a surefire impact reliever. If you leave him there, he could go to the rotation. But if I was having him, I would certainly start him out in the pen and go from there.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep him in the bullpen. I did like him too. Yeah, it was a 70% that jumped out at me. I actually like my other pick more, and I actually wrote it down. Kevin Rhodes. I'm very shocked that he was available at this stage of the game. A switch hitting, good alpha, 17 years old. I'm super shocked that he was available. Kevin Rhodes.
Yeah, he's certainly a good pick based on the surrounding talent, what we're looking at. The thing with Rhodes is similar to the conversation we were having about the Atlanta outfielder is I don't know what he's bringing to the table offensively. He is a switch hitter that certainly gives it a boost. But I don't see him being able to hit his way on base.
No, but his contact is right there with his overall, so you never know if that jumps up.
It's certainly a good. It's a good lottery ticket at this point.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Fifth round.
Sorry for the rapid fire. I know this is extremely rapid.
I thought you wrote this down, bro.
I did write this down. I got tabs I got to click through. Get with it, dude. This was an Arizona pick I liked. I liked plenty of Arizona picks. Not all of them got mentioned out, obviously, but 126, Chris Grafer, another relief pitcher.
1, 2, 6.
Guess we're on a little bit of a Grafer, another pitcher that's a real good bet.
I do like Grafer.
Yep, he keeps the ball down, good control, pretty projectable build. Don't be scared off by him being a lefty. I know a lot of GMs just get scared off by lefties and don't even touch them, but I don't think that should affect a pitcher like Grafer. I think he's going to be a good arm.
Underrated. I like Joe Pembroke, Seattle.
Yeah, I do. That was another name I had, Joe Pembroke.
I think if he hits some jumps, he could be have decent power. His defense isn't going to be that great, but I think he could be playable at second base. You know, if you're okay with average defense there.
I think Pembroke's one of the high upside guys.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Actually, I think if he hits one of those like stair climbs, he's gonna like keep that upside there for a while. And he's 17 years old. Really,
yeah, it's hard to know.
Big fan of that pick.
Obviously, when you're talking about a 17-year-old, but it's certainly a possibility.
Right.
Let's see if I had one more name for a Rafael Villa. He went 132 to Baltimore. He's not a catcher, but he can be a first baseman. He can be a third baseman. He also can be a left fielder. He offers a lot of flexibility as to where he. He's got a bit of upside. Let's see if he can get the staircase. I like what Vila brings to the table: flexibility and decent upside.
And here's the thing: whoever's listening, the 4th, 5th, 6th round picks, if you can hit those picks, and a lot of us have, you have made your draft that much better, obviously. But that
it really
better, makes your mileage makes your trade chips better. Like I personally hate when people punt on their late round picks. You could find things out here. You just gotta kind of just make educated guesses.
I mean, it's like 70% skill and 30% luck.
Yeah, of course, it's luck.
You gotta take your lottery tickets.
But you can look deep and see like, oh wow, this guy Rafael Villa, he might not be a 90 peak, but I'm gonna compare him to, a guy who looks like him and he has good upside. I don't know, but definitely don't punt your late round pick. 6th round pick, a guy I liked, Arizona, Rudy Hernandez. He was a guy I liked. I like where his control's at. He's a little bit older, but I think he's got a lot of time. Obviously, he's got a lot of upside. He's got a lot of time to develop. He might not see a guy like him until he's 27, 28. But if he does hit his jumps, I think he could become have a bullpen role. I like.
I think we've established a theme that there was a lot of worthy pitcher lottery tickets this year, just because.
Like you're putting yourself in a good position if you're going to get a guy like Rudy Hernandez. There's lots to like there.
Yeah, my pick for my 6th round lottery ticket was Dan Knight. A little more progressed than some of the other pitchers that we talked about, but his control is definitely going to stay above his overall because he's already
one more time with that
overall.
What was that name?
Dan Knight, 160 my team. Yeah,
I liked him too. He could be a.
So I think he's like a guaranteed relief pitcher.
If you could find a major leaguer in the 5th, 6th round, you have won that draft. Well, not like overall, but I'm saying you won that part of the draft.
Yeah, you're getting great value with a pitcher like that. When I look at people's bullpens, I think he'll be better than what 75% of people are trotting out in their short relief spot, for instance. So I think Dan Knight is a guaranteed major leaguer that I got at the back end of the 6th round.
Totally agree. All right, so let's jump into our winning teams and our losers.
Should we start with losers? Or should we start with winners?
You know what? The floor is yours. You can go wherever way you want.
I'm going to start with losers, just so we can end on a positive note, I suppose. This a little bit, but one of the losers for me was the Dodgers. I think he put a lot of his eggs in a basket with not terribly high upside. I like Jamie Truitt, but I think he made a lot of effort to move up to 2, and the way I'm looking at pick 2 is I'd rather end up with Fingers, I'd rather end up with Ross, or I'd rather end up with Aragoon. Truitt could prove me wrong, there's no doubt about it, but I think looking at it today with the information I have at hand, I think Dodgers are a loser because Scott made so much effort to move up to 2, and I'm just not feeling the pick the same way other GMs are.
2 teams I'm not high on when it comes to getting out of this draft. Twins and Rangers. I'm surprised that they both traded out to get out of this draft. Minnesota's starting this trend of rebuilding, and then they traded out to get a guy that helps them, yes, but I don't see the vision of grabbing a DH McSorley. I think that's his name. In Minnesota.
Yep, I agree.
I like McSorley. He looks like a really good player, but he doesn't fit the window that you're really going for right now.
And at the end of the day, McSorley's replaceable.
Definitely replaceable. He's a right-handed bat, power bat, but he's not a stud. I didn't like it. I don't think you found yourself a franchise.
Your other pick?
Rangers, yeah, they haven't, not sure when the last winning season was, but I'm surprised that they traded out of the first round. I thought they had this little, they had the first overall, not first overall. I'm thinking of someone else, but they had a good stretch of picks for years now, and then they traded out to get a starter that's like 27, 20 years old from Florida. I didn't really see Pat Takahashi. Didn't see the vision of that trade. Just didn't see the vision. I don't like the idea of trading out, and you have a young team that's not ready to bloom yet.
I think to defend Texas a little bit, I think Takahashi isn't going to lose value. I think if you want to turn him around just this offseason, he could get back what he put into it.
But what are we doing trade for him then? You're trading the first round pick to what? Turn around and trade him again?
No, I'm just saying it's possible. If his roster isn't shaping up the way it is in a year or two or even 3, I think he can recoup the value, and I don't think it's an issue. Just to defend him. I don't think it's grounds for calling him or grouping him in with the worst drafts.
No, I'm just saying the loser. We're talking about losers
right now, but
situational.
Yeah. No, I certainly see your point. I had one more team to mention is sort of a team that I thought that whiffed, and I think that was the Cubs. I think the Cubs had an opportunity to maybe use the picks in a trade, like we sort of talked about. But just looking at the picks he made, I think he whiffed on the picks that he kept. I think Nolan McWork in the first round wasn't a good pick. A lot of similarities to the Seattle outfielder we discussed. I think he could have done a lot more with his first and second round picks, whether it's through a trade or selecting. I think it wasn't a good effort.
I wasn't the biggest fan of the overall draft of the Marlins. They traded a lot of assets to get the picks that they've acquired. And I didn't see a full draft that's, wow, okay, we're going to trade our studs and go for this draft class. I did not see it.
That is a classic theme of teams sort of selling out, just saying, I'm rebuilding right now. I'm getting all the draft picks I can. That's a common theme. They get too many picks and they don't do the right things with them, and then they set themselves back.
I just didn't think this was the draft to do all like it was a good balanced draft, but it wasn't a star-studded draft. You could have gotten some good guys, but to tear it down and rebuild to this draft, I disagree with that because it died after 2. It died after 2.
You don't have to work too hard to get me to hate on anything Hokie. I think he had a pretty. Vance was a good pick, but outside of that, I think he whiffed pretty good.
Also, next team is Boston. I think they got autoed, and they had a good second round pick, and they whiffed on a bad play that G hates. So I didn't like Boston's draft either. Winning teams, and this is going beyond the draft. Winning teams. I'm gonna start with Atlanta. Loved their pickups. Cecil Nation and getting Montehugo. I think I'm gonna call him that. Even though I think Montehugo, sure, say what you want about him. He could be, he can give home runs. He's not as good as you think he is, but I think if you put a great team behind him, he could be a stud. Also, I think that Cecil Nation. I think Cecil Nation is a very nice DH in this league, and he also is pretty controllable too.
Yeah, to jump back to the Montehugo thing, I'm not understanding how he fits with the Braves. He's got 5 pitchers on the roster, 5 starters on the roster that are already better than him. I don't understand what that changes. I don't.
Sure, but they gain an asset, and starting pitchers. Even though I don't know what they're going to do with their, like what? How many pitchers do they have? They seemingly have 7, 8, 9 guys that they could like trade out.
He's certainly a tradable.
They got themselves. I don't know who you're going to trade out there, but they can definitely flip a guy and say, hey, we want a good player of this weak position that we have, third base. I don't know. And they can go pick up someone. I'm just definitely a fan of Montehugo, the pitcher. I'm definitely a fan of Cecil Nation, the hitter. So I thought they're definitely a winner of this draft. To be
fair on Montehugo, his vitals are shiny, but you got to look at the stats and see that he's just been fairly average.
Yeah, I know. And I'm looking more at the vitals and the actual stats.
Home run problems in the easiest one of the easiest parks to pitch in. So it's
You're right.
important to keep in mind that if he moves to another average park, maybe he's a 3.8 pitcher, and he's not that much to look at.
Looking around, I was a fan of the LA draft overall.
Agreed. I think the Angels had a good draft, despite there's a few hiccups, but I like the Angels draft.
I like the Angels draft, top to bottom, because I didn't see many teams besides mine, because I draft Hall of Famers over here, but top to bottom, I was a really big fan of the LA draft. And another team that I liked from the draft situation, the Yankees. They picked up a nice starter, Wetzel from Florida. New York needs a starter, and they traded out their first round pick to get him. I thought it was an excellent situation to get him. Got 26-year-old.
Yeah, Wetzel's a better arm than the one we were just talking about that left Florida, in my opinion.
Yeah. Wetzel is, he's a guy who can last another 10 years and still look the same. The Yankees need a starter, and I knew he was on the starter because we were talking too. But I thought Wetzel was a great get in this. And I think he traded 13th overall. And if you're going to compare whoever that pick was to Wetzel, I would take Wetzel in a heartbeat for another 10 years.
Agreed.
And that wraps things up for me.
All
Peter,
right.
you got anything? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I got some winners. I mean, I haven't.
Oh yeah, you haven't touched your winners.
No, sure.
I was getting negative.
Yeah, sure.
Go on.
I think Arizona had a good draft. I think that probably goes a little. Usually does have a good draft, but I think he made good picks right at the top with Fingers and Kitty Cowan. I think he's going to be happy with what those guys bring. And then he had a bunch of late lottery ticket type pitchers that pick. So I think we're going to look back, I don't know, in 5 seasons and say, wow, he got this guy in the 5th round. And just overall, this is one of the best drafts that coming out of this year.
Hopefully not hoisting a World Series ring.
Yeah, let's not go there, please.
It's a 10-7.
So, despite my hate earlier on Trev Courtney that we've already discussed, I think the Astros did work. I like the pick of Albright in the 2nd. I like the pick of in round. So I think Houston picks he
Peter, you're a little bit in and out right now.
is that despite some of the hate that we gave to see over the course of the show, I think he did some good things with his middle round picks. He's certainly a winner of the draft, but I think he's going to lead with players like Nagasawa in the 1st round, Alex Stroh, Chris Mitchell out of the 2nd round, Leon Latero out of the 3rd round. So I think when Seattle looks back in this in 5 years, he's going to think this is a pretty good draft despite his whiff in the 1st round.
I actually don't think that he had as good as a draft as you're thinking that he had. I think he could have done better.
Absolutely. He absolutely could have done better. There's no doubt about that.
I wouldn't necessarily call him a winner in this draft.
That's fair. Yeah, definitely fair.
What I saw was a lot of corner outfielders who I don't see studs stay picked up in the corner outfield. And if you're going to pick up a corner outfielder high, unless they're going to be tremendous DHs, I don't know. You could find those guys in a market, in a trade market somewhere. He made some good picks, but I don't love them all to say he's a winner. No.
Yep.
Kind of down on his draft, actually. I like some of his late picks.
I totally get it.
I like some of his late picks like Pembroke. Don't like his overall draft.
All right. That's all I had written down for sort of draft winners. I don't know if we want to follow up, or I think that's basically it. Maybe we can post the link and then.
Yeah, definitely post the link. This is fun, man.
Yeah, GMs can post their feedback on flame us for any stupid things we said.
Hey, man. We always have hot takes on something, and then it doesn't work out. Whatever, it's part of the gig.
If they want to hate on what we're saying, they can have their own pod and get flamed for what they're saying. It's bound to happen.
But this has been fun. It's been a couple of seasons since we've done something like this.
Yeah, it's been good to have a draft pod. Always a fan favorite.
Always, and it's nice to have participation from Mizzy, from Maddie, obviously. So it's good to have some content out there so people could talk about and whatever. But it's an absolute crime that there's not a sim tonight. I'm actually a little bit upset about that.
Yep.
We've been very spoiled lately.
Builds up the anticipation for tomorrow, for sure.
Right. All right. Well, I'm Jmaine, working with Peter. It's been fun. G2, thanks for coming out. This has been fun. So we'll come back in the chat and we'll talk shit to each other. It's all good fun. So until next time.
Ciao, ciao.